Hello and welcome to this session with Building the Future. My name is Chloe Hackenmore, and I am so honored to be speaking here with you today. This is actually a personal honor for me as my mom is half Portuguese, and this is my first time being able to serve the beautiful country of Portugal and all of you who are here today. In addition to it being a personal honor, this is really a professional honor for me too. You see, I have the privilege to talk to you today about a topic that we really don't get enough time for, and that is well being. Well, in this session today, I'm going to talk to you about well being, how it applies to your life, but also how it applies to your career, the workplace, and the impact you hope to make in your lifetime. I'm also going to challenge you to rethink well being just from personal wellness, as we've usually heard it, to how we can change the world and ultimately build a better future for all of us. So I'm excited for this session. I hope you get to take notes, ask questions, and without further ado, we're going to dive in. Now, most of you here don't know me yet, and so I'm going to spend just the first part telling you a bit about my story, and hopefully you can see some of your own experience reflected in it. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm someone who grew up believing and knowing that giving to others was the mark of a good life. And of course, I have my own goals and I have things, but we hear so often in our world that giving to others is really the sign of having a noble life. And while I totally believe that's true, I went through a phase where I did too much and I gave too much, and it actually harmed my health. And this is contrary to everything I had grown up knowing, and yet I found myself working so hard to be the best in school, to be the best in my career, to be the best daughter, the best partner, the best sister, the best community member possible. And I was giving so much, and I would have people saying very kind things in return. I would win these awards, I would get the job, and yet when I took moments to be by myself, I'd still feel empty. And that feeling where the success would feel so good and feel great for just a moment would quickly die away. And I kept being on this cycle, which was frustrating emotionally, but I thought that that was okay until it started affecting my health, my physical health. So, to give you a bit of context, when I first started my professional career, I was committed to making a difference. I just wanted to help my community, but also, if I could be honest with you, I wanted a leadership role. And I wanted to be able to be someone who could be of service because I wanted to know I was a good person. I wanted to feel worthy. I wanted to, in this lifetime, not just make an impact, but to feel good inside. And so I gave it my all. I gave it everything I had. And time after time, just like I saw that achievement complex feeling good for a moment, but then quickly not being enough, I kept having to win bigger, to achieve more. And then I found myself anxious all the time and also experiencing depression. Now, the funny thing is, if you have anxiety and depression, it's I shouldn't call it funny, but it kind of is. Depression says, I'm tired, I don't care, I don't have the energy to do anything. Whereas anxiety says, we need to do everything right now, yesterday, it's not enough, etc. So when these two come together, it's paralyzing. It also doesn't feel good. You don't feel like yourself. You feel like no matter how hard you try, it's never enough. And it's this constant cycle that is hard on you. It's hard on the body physically, it's hard on your mind, and it's obviously hard on your emotions and your spirit. Well, when I looked around one day, I realized I had gotten the job. I had shown up for my family. I had done the things, and yet I did not feel fulfilled and I was sick. It brought me to the question of what is going on? And it got to the point where, very personally, I was having panic attacks. And I was dealing with the fact that, honestly, if I could just have a moment of vulnerability with you, the truth is I was scared of dying. I was scared of, at one point knowing this life ends, not knowing if I had made the most of it yet, and feeling that kind of pressure gnawing at me all the time. And so I started going to therapy. I talk about this a lot in my TED Talk, so I won't repeat the whole story here, but I started going to therapy, and what I found out really blew me away. And I found out that in all of my giving, I had actually been ignoring my number one responsibility, which, drum roll, you probably guessed, it was me. I was ignoring myself. I was ignoring my own needs, my own desires, and I was ignoring the fact that I had to take care of myself. Now, this goes against so much of what I had learned, and maybe that you learned growing up, which was you give to others to have a good life, right? You focus so much on other people. And if you think too much of yourself, then you might have a big head. You might be selfish. You might be too egoistic, egotistical, arrogant. All of these terms are things that I've heard used connected with thinking of yourself too much. And I realized that this mindset is actually keeping us from the lives we want to live. So I had to get back to the very basics of learning, how do I care for myself? How do I make sure that I am well nourished? How do I make sure that I am not only just going after the things that I want in life, but I'm also nourishing myself along the way so that I'm not depleted, so that my health is not harmed, so that I can still show up for the things I want to without being too exhausted and undermotivated because of depression, or too high strung and feeling like I'm never good enough because of the anxiety. I had to reset how I operated as a person and then decide, what does Chloe want? Not what does society say being a good human is. What do I want? What are the things inside that I know nourish me and light me up? And so what that looked like was I had to develop a personal wellness practice. Now, some of you have heard of wellness and you think of, taking a day off, you think of having, a face mask, getting your hair done, or maybe going to play football or whatever it is, and then going back to your normal cycle. Well, actually, that's not true wellness. You need a practice around it. And so, wellness to me, a personal wellness routine looks like, are you sleeping regularly and enough? Are you drinking your water? Are you eating nutritious food? But also, do you speak kindly to yourself in your own mind? Do you give yourself grace when you mess up? Do you cheerlead yourself when you actually make the success you want? How do you show up for you? And so from that point, I started recognizing, wow, I'm feeling better. And even if I didn't have a new goal or a new accomplishment, I felt really wonderful. And not just wonderful, I felt worthy. I felt worthy not just of being here, but worthy of just being a human, worthy of having needs, worthy of having dreams. And from that point, I started to build the same things I wanted. I was able to show up for them, but show up in a way that I wasn't resentful. I wasn't tired and burnt out. I wasn't anxious and feeling like I wasn't enough. I was able to show up with myself feeling fulfilled and feeling worthy, and then being able to create from the overflow of how worthy and confident I've been able to cultivate my inner world. So, this is actually where our conversation about well being starts. Now, usually when we talk about well being, again, it's vacation, it's spending time with loved ones, it's now, taking care of yourself. But there's so much more to well being. And this is why I am so excited that we get to have this conversation when we're thinking about building our future. When we think about how do we build after years of a pandemic that's still going on, when we think about the fact that the World Bank, the World Health Organization, every global monitoring organization says we are on record the most prosperous we've ever seen our world be, and at the same time have the right, like the largest rising inequality we've ever known, where poverty is much deeper and wealth is much higher than we've ever seen in recorded history. How do we decide how to move forward together as a collective society? And that's not to mention the fact that technology has connected us in ways we never thought possible, like me getting to talk to you here today. So, with understanding that we see each other more, we have rising inequality, but also the most prosperity in recorded history, we've got a big question in front of us. And that is, as we build the future, who are we building it for? How are we going to build this? And what are the goals that we set for our collective selves? Now, if you haven't guessed, I have an opinion on this, and that is that I believe building a future together that works for all of us and our planet requires a focus on well being. Now, well being, as we've kind of touched, is not just about making sure you feel at peace inside, but feeling at peace inside is the first step to knowing how we create peace in our world. Oftentimes, when you see people who are, or organizations who have worked so hard to solve social problems, but yet we still are seeing rising inequality, it's likely because as a society, we don't know what peace feels like for our own selves, let alone for our communities, our relationships, and the larger institutions that govern us all, like government, business, um, intercultural exchange, all of these things. And so we have to start with knowing peace for ourselves and feeling worthy as we are. And then it has to ripple out. So then you have to look at well being in your interpersonal relationships with your family, your loved ones, your neighborhood, even. And when you start to realize that well being in neighborhoods looks like people being safe, people having the resources to be nourished, to be housed, to be well hydrated, well rested in dignified conditions, and then to also have time to express their innate human creativity, to explore their curiosities, and to have that very human experience of being able to create and have a life that is rooted in dignity. And usually when people think about their impact, that's kind of where we stop. We think, if I had my high desired life, I would make my community better. Well, I'm going to challenge you today to know that you can do more. Our governments in the world, our business communities in the world, they're ever changing. They're also tasked with the same question of how do we govern people? How do we show up for people? How do we create rules and opportunities for people and the planet to be well? And sometimes, if I could just be honest with you, we haven't answered that question very well, nor have we had the same goal. And so it's such an honor to be able to talk with you today, to ask you to think about what is the role of well being as we build a new future? What is the role of well being in your workplace? What is the role of well being in your family life, in your own lifestyle practices? And how can we use this as a tool and a framework for building the future? So, I can give an example of how I believe we can best do this. So, you probably know this that your thoughts dictate your behavior. And then from your behavior, you start to see results. And from those results, you start to see action between you and your environment. Well, when you start a personal routine around wellness, it has no choice but to show up in your external world. It has no choice but to show up in the outcomes of your own life. And once you have that kind of wellness to where you feel so well situated within who you are, what you want, and how you want to get there, and you're pursuing that routinely, you can inspire other people and you will also have space to help others do the same. So, as you are building your own wellness routine and getting really settled in your own self, you start to have space to help others and to help others in a way that doesn't cause resentment. So, I'm not going to ask you to admit this, but just think about it for yourself. Think about if there's ever been a time you have been asked to do something or have been held up to a responsibility that you really didn't want, you didn't like to have, and later on you felt resentful about it. I'm going to guess that's all of you. I know it certainly applies to me. Well, when you start to realize what it is that you want, what you need, and how you want to achieve those things, you also start to develop something called boundaries. Now, if you haven't heard of the book, I highly recommend reading the book Boundaries. It's a wonderful tool and guide. But having boundaries helps you know and helps you be able to show up not only for you, but for others in a way that doesn't breed resentment because it allows you to say no. It also allows you to say yes when that's appropriate, right? Boundaries are applicable with your personal life, your relationships, your work, and also with your businesses and the government, right? I know this gets much more politically theoretical. I know it's a much bigger conversation than just having boundaries, but it's a helpful start. Once you know how you want to care for yourself, once you know your boundaries, you can start to show up for people in a way that feels good to you, does not cause resentment, and hopefully helps other individuals do the same in their own lives. So think about this. Think about if you had your family unit and the people you love all caring for their well being to the highest level, healing the trauma or the hard things they've been through, showing up for their own dreams, going after their own goals, and also being mutually supportive to one another. That to me looks like healthy community. And from there, there's also a responsibility we have to take care of our planet. Our planet, and we could get into details, we can get into conversations about the theory as well, but at the most simplest fundamental place, our planet is what we live on. Our planet is what we share. And taking care of it not only ensures that your communities are healthy, that you're healthy, but generations in the future have somewhere to exist on, have somewhere to breathe from, right? Have water to drink. Very basics. And so, as we look to building the future, yes, there are personal things we can do. There are interpersonal things we can do in our relationships. There are things we can do for our community. There are ways we can advocate to our businesses and governments. And also, there are things we can do to protect the planet, all from a place of what does a healthy world look like and how can I contribute to this? So, as I'm starting to wrap up our session today, which I feel like just absolutely flew by, there are a few things that I want you to consider. The first thing is that you matter. If no one has told you this, not only do you matter, but you are enough as you are. There's nothing you need to prove, there's nothing you need to accomplish, there is nothing that you need to say or do to be worthy. Now, I know our society doesn't really give this message too often, but the truth of the matter is, my life is not more valuable than yours, your life is not more valuable than mine, and vice versa. And so I want you to know not only are you worthy, you matter, and that the things that you want in life, they're attainable. In addition to that, the things you want, take your work to show up for them. The relationships you want, take work, and you're capable. And finally, I want you to consider that well being is not just a check the box, it's not just time out at the office, it's not just even your personal wellness routine, which is incredibly important. Well being is a framework for how to live our lives, how to care for one another, how to care for our planet, and how to ensure there's a future for us to look to. And so, as you think about well being, I'm going to challenge you today. I'm going to challenge you to develop and commit to your personal well being. And to know that if that's all that you focus on in life, if that's all you're able to do, that's beautiful in itself. That's a life well lived. And if you find that you are chasing your well being, you are feeling fulfilled in that, help someone else, help your community, help us as a collective get to a place where well being is not just a check the box for some, but it's a lifestyle and a new vision for us all. This to me is how we build a future that's resilient, that's adaptable, and that will rise to any new challenges we have, pandemic or not. And today, I hope that if you take away nothing else from this conversation, you remember that you are enough. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope to connect with you soon.